Hey guys! So I'm going to make this intro really short and sweet because I want to get to the meat of the video. Whenever I was pregnant, 2009 and 2010, I didn't even know about pregnancy vlogs or any of that, and so I feel like I kind of missed out a little bit, but I did document my pregnancy by making a little scrapbook of it, and I kind of made it in a format of a story so that I can eventually read the story to Sadie so she can kind of understand where she came from and how she started out. And I wanted to show you that scrapbook today. So there are some details that I'll have to fill in along the way just because I kind of wanted it to be understandable for a child. But I wanted to just really share this with you, and also I can kind of tell you the story of my pregnancy along the way. So here we go. Okie dokie. There's the front of the album. It is a 5x7 album, and that's just the first time I ever saw her. That's what she looked like. So that's the picture that I put in the front. So Sadie. Okay, that's the full picture. All right. New beginnings. On November 5th, 2009, Daddy asked Mommy if she was ready to start a family. He decorated the bathroom while I was in the shower, and I didn't even notice. Of course, I said yes. So that was the mirror that he decorated. I don't know if you can get a good view of that. It says, "Are you ready to be a mommy? Check yes or no," because I'm ready to be a daddy. And he picked that because one of my favorite songs is Check Yes or No by George Strait. Great song. And I saved the little square from the calendar of that day. I wrote the proposal on it, and then I saved the month title. And we were actually pregnant by December 11th. That was our positive pregnancy test. And I didn't realize how lucky I was at the time, and now I completely do. To only have been trying for 1 month and come up pregnant was completely amazing. So I do realize how lucky I am now. I did not back then. 6 weeks. We had our first ultrasound on December 30th, 2009. You were so little, just a pea, but we got a sneak peek at your tiny heartbeat, 130 beats per minute. At this point, you were 6 weeks and 2 days old, putting your due date at August 24th, 2010. So that was my uterus, and that was a little sac, and then the heartbeat was down there. On April 2nd, 2010, we had our 19-week ultrasound. It was the Friday before Easter, and you were being such a stinker. You stayed in the same position for almost an hour, and we were, however, able to find out that you were a little girl, and we were so happy. So there's her backbone, and that's her skull, and this is her little hand right here going up. The ultrasound tech did tell us that she wasn't able to get all the measurements that she needed, and she told us that we were going to have to come back for another ultrasound, and that our OBGYN would call us sometime in the next week to schedule that for us. So we kind of just thought that we were kind of lucky. We were really excited that we would get to see another ultrasound because in our medical group you get the 19-week gender ultrasound where they check, everything to make sure it's going well. And you might get, if you didn't know when your last cycle was, you might get an ultrasound at the beginning to verify your due date. But other than that, that's really the only ultrasounds that you get unless something is wrong. So when she told us that we were just going to get checked because she wasn't able to get all of the measurements, we just kind of thought we were lucky. But then whenever the doctor called us, she informed us that the measurements in her arm looked abnormal, and so she was sending us to a perinatalogist to kind of watch over the pregnancy. And that scared us a bit, but she also assured us that it could have just been her position in my uterus, that she wasn't able to get a good measurement. So it's possible that everything was okay, and she told us not to worry, just to go see the perinatalogist in a couple weeks. So at 19 weeks, there's a couple more pictures. That was her facing forward. She looks kind of scary. And then in this one, there's her foot right there. You really cannot see, it's so dark, but that was her foot. At 22 weeks. On April 20th, 18 days later, 2010, we went to the perinatalogist to get a better look at you. The nurse determined you weighed 1 pound and 1 ounce at this time. We finally got a good look at your profile. You look like mommy, and you also love to show us your feet. I can't wait to tickle them. So there's her little side profile, and here's her little foot. At this appointment, they also did an amniocentesis because they were able to tell us that there was an abnormality in her arm, and they wanted to do an amniocentesis to make sure that if there was any syndrome that went along with that abnormality, that they were aware of it. Because a lot of the times whenever radial club hand occurs, there's also some syndrome that can come with it. So we went back a couple of weeks, or like a week or two later, and we saw the geneticist who went over the results with us, and she told us that there was absolutely no markers or anything like that in our amniocentesis, and she was not, hold on one second, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Excuse me. And she said that there were no signs of syndrome. So that was a huge blessing. We were, at that point we were okay with the fact that she was going to have a physical abnormality, but if there was going to be a mental disability, we were really scared of that. So we were really happy to find out that it was there was no syndromes. So this was 22 weeks, and then they told us that we were going to have to come back at 25 weeks to get an echocardiogram with one of the doctors, which is basically an ultrasound of the heart. 25 weeks. This week things started getting really tough. We went in and got an echocardiogram by doctor number 1, and he said we had to stay in the hospital until you were born. Now, during the echocardiogram, he also checked the pulsations of the umbilical cord, because as the heart beats, the umbilical cord is pulsating, and the pulsations were really, really weak. And also, whenever he measured her growth, she hadn't grown any between 25 weeks and 22 weeks. So he was really, really concerned, and he told us that we had to stay in the hospital, and that it would only be a matter of time before Sadie's heartbeat was going to plummet, her heart rate was going to plummet, and that they were going to need to perform an emergency C-section. So after he told us that, we were admitted into the hospital, and then a neonatologist came and talked to us, one of the doctors that work in the NICU, and he basically told us that there was no hope for Sadie, that a baby born at 25 weeks who was completely normal had a very small chance of living, and the fact that she hadn't grown in a couple weeks, and also the fact that she had maybe an unknown syndrome or an unknown disability, plus her club hand, it just didn't look good for her. He said that we needed to decide whether we were going to let her go, or whether we wanted him to take extraordinary measures just to keep her alive, at which point, if we were to keep her alive, she would probably be blind, deaf, quadriplegic, etc., etc. And he was just really cold and heartless while he was talking to us. And I know that some doctors just have to distance themselves and be very objective, but it was really, really hard to live with. So that was what we were faced with. So they put me on the monitor, the fetal heart monitor, and I was just listening to her heartbeat and feeling her kick and move inside of me, and I could not give him an answer. I could not tell him whether I wanted him to take extraordinary measures or whether I wanted to just leave things alone. I couldn't give him an answer. And so he kind of got upset and he left. I could tell he wasn't very happy with us, but I just couldn't give him an answer. It just did not feel right to say, yes, let her die, or no, do a bunch of surgeries on her and cause chaos. Like that, neither answer seemed right to me. So yeah, I stayed in the hospital that night. The doctors, I'll read the little journal down here. The doctors told us some very hard things. They told us you probably wouldn't make it. Mommy stayed in the hospital that night, listening to your heartbeat on the monitor and praying for God to help me make the right choices. Doctor number 2, which was a different doctor, came in the next morning and asked if we wanted to go home. He said that the heart rate could drop out in 5 seconds, or it could drop out in a matter of weeks. And he said that if it was going to drop out in a matter of weeks, that me laying in a bed was not going to help anything. It wasn't going to make me any healthier to be in a hospital and not move, and it would probably not be good for my mental status to just be listening to the heart monitor all the time. And so he gave us the choice. He said, well, you can either stay here and give me permission to do a C-section, or you can go home and take a risk that the next time you come back for a checkup that she's not there. And so at this point, my husband had gone home to let the dog out, and it was only 10 minutes later that the doctor walked in and gave me this choice. And I told him, well, just wait for my husband to come back. And he said, nope, it's your body, you have to make the choice. So I said, well, I am going to go home. And I figured if I changed my mind, I could always go back to the doctor and say I changed my mind. But if I gave him the go ahead, I didn't know how quickly he was going to wheel me into the OR. So yeah, my husband came back and he got me, and I went home onto strict bed rest, and we closed the door to Sadie's nursery room that we were starting to work on, and I basically just laid my hand on my stomach and waited for kicks and movements, and that's the only way I got through the day, was to feel her moving around, because if she was moving, that meant she was okay. Okay, there's a picture of her side profile, and there's a picture of her front, and then here's a picture of her whole body side profile. Kick by kick and day by day, you continued to grow and get better while Mommy rested at home. You began to amaze all the doctors as you inched closer to your due date and further from all the scary stories we were told about you. The doctors didn't know what to say about the fact that she was not deteriorating. It was just an amazing story of how our faith was overcoming the science of the situation. We eventually made it to our baby shower, which we were, trying to decide if we should even have a baby shower, because we didn't know if she was going to make it. But every week that passed, we knew that she was getting stronger and stronger, and that it was more and more likely that she would survive. So we went ahead and had a shower. Here's some pictures of 34 weeks. She has her little legs crossed. There's her little nose and her mouth. And then here's another one of her heart scans at 35 weeks. The journaling starts at 31 weeks though. At 31 weeks, doctor number 2 noticed that your heart rate was very high during an ultrasound. And just to let you know, I was having ultrasounds pretty much once or twice a week at this point. And so just at 31 weeks, randomly, her heart rate just had skyrocketed. From then on, we had to visit the doctors closer to the city twice a week, and they put me on a special medication. I had been in the hospital overnight that night for, I can't remember if that was 1 day or 3 days, and they had me put on a medication called digoxin to regulate the baby's heart rate. So they put me on 2.5 times a normal adult dose, so that the medication could go all through my system, through my pancreas, through the placenta, and get to her and through all of her body to affect her heart without the medication becoming toxic to me. So that was a challenge for them, but it did buy us some time. So at 35 weeks and 6 days, doctor number 1, which was the doctor that originally had put us in, had originally admitted us and told us that we were going to have a C-section at 25 weeks, and basically told us that she was not going to make it. He was actually the one that was at the hospital that day to admit me for my C-section at 35 weeks, 6 days. He determined it was time for her to come out because the medication was not really helping her as much as they like, and I was becoming toxic because of it. I had my Aunt Crystal with me at that appointment because Daddy had, her dad, because of all of the appointments that we went to where everything was okay, he worked that day instead of taking off, so I took my aunt with me. So your daddy, grandma, and Pap along with Uncle Chuck rushed to the hospital and got ready to welcome you to the world. So, and then let's see. Then Mommy went in for a C-section and you were born at 2:41 p.m. The date was July 26th, 2010, which was a month earlier than her due date. If you'll remember, it was August 24th. So she was born July 26th. Our wait was finally over and we got to meet you at 4 pounds, 7 ounces and so very beautiful. And here is our first family picture. So that morning we I went with my aunt because Robert decided to work that night. I went with my aunt up to the city, and they did a non-stress test, and I told them, because she had the tachycardia, that it wasn't going to read well on the stress test. I could tell them that she was moving and everything like that, but there was no way for them to be able to monitor her heart rate the way that they wanted to. So the stress tests were just kind of annoying because I knew that it wasn't reading it correctly. And finally, doctor number one pulled the curtain back and came into my little section, and he's like, "You're still pregnant, you're still here, the baby's still here." And I told him, I said, "Yeah, it's a miracle." And he's like, "I'm a scientist, but there's no way I can explain this." And he's like, "I will give you that, it is a miracle." He's like, but we're ready to get this baby out. So at that point, we had made it 11 weeks longer than we had ever thought. When we were 25 weeks pregnant, we were so happy to make it almost to 36 weeks, which was the point where they said that, we were basically home free. And so he said, "Yep, let's sign you up for a C-section." So he sent me down to the hospital, and I was in the room, and I met and I had already, because we'd been at the hospital so much, I had already met the doctor that was going to perform the C-section. It was not doctor number one, it was a different doctor. And he went back and he got ready. My whole family got there. We went back into the C-section room, and they put on some rock music, which was really interesting. I did not have any idea that surgeons liked to operate to music. Well, that was something that I learned that day. And Sadie was born to "Big Girls Don't Cry" was the song that was playing. And I went under, and I didn't go under, but they did the anesthesia. I was laying there, and all of a sudden I heard her crying, and I said, "That's my baby, that's my baby." And I really wanted to see her the second I heard her crying, but I knew that they had to, check her over because of all the complications that we had. And I thought that they would hold her up over the curtain at least so that I could see her all gooey, but I did not get to see her all gooey. But they brought her over to me all swaddled up, and I got to see her for the first time. And then they took her off to the NICU and got her situated on her medication and got her all ready to go. Her APGAR was like an 8-9, so she was perfectly great, but they did take her to the NICU, and I wasn't able to see her for 12 more hours because I had to recover from the anesthesia. So that was really sad, but this family picture in the back was our first family picture, and it was at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:11 in the morning. I didn't care about sleep. I just wanted to get to her. So yeah, so that is our pregnancy and birth story. I hope you guys enjoyed, and maybe got some ideas on how to make a scrapbook story, I guess. I don't know what you'd really call it, but it was just the way that we decided to document our pregnancy. So again, I hope you enjoyed, and please subscribe for more videos to follow our family, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.